Hey peoples, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of How To with the Caribbean Gaffer, powered by 13 Degrees North Rentals. In today's episode, we'll be looking at the how-to of finding solutions for your basic camera problems. Now, in most instances, when you get your new camera, you are going to encounter problems on set, but joining me today to help you figure out how to solve those solutions or solve those problems is none other than Neal Hope of Neal Hope Films, my good friend. I would venture to say one of the people that I think I have inspired the most on this island.
I think so too.
And he's listened, and that's why I love this guy. He listens. Neal, and with that, I actually want to give you an honorary 13 Degrees North Productions hat, my brother.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome to the family.
Yes, thanks.
Officially, on camera. Welcome to the family.
Thank you. Let me put it back just because.
Correct. Neal has gone away. He has studied. He's come back to Barbados. He's come back to sharing knowledge. I know he's very passionate about sharing knowledge just like I am. And we are always here to help you. Now let's look at the basics. I like to start at the fundamentals.
Sure.
So let me start at the beginning. If you don't understand how to set up a tripod, you're already failing.
Very true. Very true.
Right?
Very true.
So let's look at how to guide people through literally setting up their tripod and making sure that they have the tool positioned correctly to achieve the best shot.
Okay. All right. So with the tripods, they got all different kinds. Most people have probably got photo tripods and transferring from photo to video. With the ball head, it isn't recommended to use that for video per se because that's something else you have to think about.
Correct.
But moving into a tripod, you should, whenever you raise it up, you should make sure you got the widest spread on the legs possible so that you don't get tipping. And if the tripod has a hook at the bottom, you could put like a sandbag or a little water bottle with a cord on it just to keep it from falling down and steady. Because some of the light tripods just blow over in the wind.
And for sure, I've seen that a million times as well. But not only that, it's also about the head.
Yes. Also, so it's good to get a video head, and it should more not just be a friction just by tightening, but it should have some sort of bearing or some sort of mechanism that isn't only just fluid just by the tightening of it, because then that's not real resistance. So you need something with step controls, resistance step controls, counterbalances, and those types of things to help you be able to have a nice panning and tilting tripod. Also underneath, if you got the locking pin that's underneath, some of them could detach and you could change your head and put it on a gimbal or another tripod, sliders, so many different things.
High hats
everything.
Or whatever.
But again, a good tripod, you don't gotta break the bank these days because a lot of companies are innovating and making things cheaper and affordable because filmmaking is becoming such a big thing now.
Yeah, correct. And then added to that, always make sure when you set up your tripod too, your head is balanced. There's a little bubble on most tripods that allows you to make sure that there's balance in your tripod is actually, or the head is actually straight, and you don't have a shot that lean into one or the other, and then you're saying, oh man, I don't know why this look crooked. It's just because your head is not balanced. So bubble up.
To add to that, also the camera does have a level in there, so you could use that plus the bubble on the tripod so that you could get something absolute. Sometimes the camera one doesn't actually be always correct, but it's good to reference them, cross-reference them with each other.
Right. And so sometimes, let me be frank, we are in the Caribbean, right? And then sometimes you want to shoot by the beach.
Yes.
Right? And depending on the angle that you're at, sometimes you just got to forget about the bubble in your tripod and level off the horizon.
Yes.
in the shot. So in some instances, you might see some amateurs go out and shoot in by the beach, and then the horizon all skewed to the side, and you're wondering what's happening. Like they can see, but they are actually using the tripod, leveling it, and saying, okay, yeah, my tripod level, but because they're slightly at an angle to the horizon, whichever way,
or the sand,
right? Then the horizon comes across as being crooked. So in that instance, you actually have to level the frame and not necessarily the head.
But this is where now you have to really be careful which tripod you buy, that the bubble level is not on the legs only and on the head. So yes.
That is also true.
Yeah,
so all that you have to be mindful of when you know getting into setting up the camera and looking at that problem and understanding that there's more than one solution to solving that problem. No, as let's go back to the same scenario, shooting on the beach. No, you and I have a darker complexion in a midday sun or being backlit. So let's say we're on the west coast of Barbados and it's 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
And we are backlit and we're trying to get an exposure shot or to see the sea. It ain't gonna work.
It's not gonna work unless you call Kirk and rent all the gear possible in the world in Barbados.
I humble by that. But still, even here at 30 Degrees North Rentals, we don't do magic. We find solutions. But I'm not a musician. A magician. So for me, the thanks for the call, by the way. But for me, the solution would be let's shoot that same shot early in the morning.
Yes.
So that then we have the sun on the eastern end, and then we have the subject, and we are shooting westward, so that we can get a nice exposure for the sea. But in some instances, then too, you might want to shoot a little bit later, and then you have to make sure that your exposure is correct. And we have varying options of making sure that happens. So ND filters could come into play, or we could use other mechanisms. But also understanding the exposure triangle.
Understanding exposure triangle.
Definitely comes into play. Now, if you were to give somebody advice on setting up their camera and making sure that to avoid having such a high shutter speed, that then your background, so then you don't create
jutter to get away from jutter.
To get away from juttering the shot.
I would say this: we love full frame, and or the notion is that full frame is the best, and you must always shoot at 1.8. Usually, typically, films is shoot at f8 and f4 to start. Sometimes even at f16, depending on the director. But for me, what I would do is keep my aperture at high number first. Also, keep my shutter speed at 150th, or shutter angle will be at 180 or 172, depending on.
Right.
And what I would do is then, if I want to make the back shallow, need an ND first. Put the ND on the lens, get it down. Turn on the waveform monitor on the camera, or turn on the histogram so we can monitor where the exposure lies. We need to get the exposure in the middle of the histogram and try to balance it as much as possible. No peaks on the ends. I would also introduce ND. And my ND, I would try to get as dark as possible first and come all the way up to see where my exposure lies.
Right.
And just to add a little touch, a lot of people got 5-in-1 reflectors. I would bring one of them in and help even out the back in terms of how much exposure in the back to the front. And that's how I would try to handle my...
Right. So that in a nutshell, we need a reflector, we need an ND, and we need monitoring. You have to monitor the shots to make sure that you're not overexposing one for the other. And as Neal said, make sure that everything is landing nicely in the middle, no peaking on the end. So you have peaks that will be overexposed on the whites, or you have peaks that too much blacks are happening. So make sure you have a nice balanced image within the monitor.
And also one more thing, if the camera has preferred ISO it likes to work at, the base, you should shoot on that. And particularly people assume that you should have low ISOs on break days, but sometimes it's good to actually go up higher so you can retain the highlights on the sensor as well. Yes.
Now, for those of you who don't know, most cameras have a native ISO, right? And it is good, especially if you are going to be shooting in RAW or in
log format.
Or in log format, to understand the native ISO of that log format that you're looking to use. Now, with that said, Neal, actually, let us explain, or let's look at, do we do RAW files or do we do MP4s?
Okay.
How would you advise people to which format to choose?
All right. Which format to choose? Depending on the situation. But the misconception about RAW is that it gives you more dynamic range. It doesn't really give you more. It could actually give you worse if you don't use it correctly. So if you have an assignment to shoot nature doc in Barbados or anywhere around the Caribbean, it would be preferred for the colorist or the company that you're delivering to have the least lossless image. And so shooting log or RAW would help that in their post-production phases if they want to crop in, if they want the most detail.
Right.
If we're shooting it.
No, you're saying lossless. No, explain lossless. Because for me, I understand the compression, but our viewers might not.
So lossless in camera terms is the least compressed image you could get. Because when you record in log, it's get compressed as well.
Right.
So lossless is be even more file size, even more data, and a better capture of the sensor.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're talking about RAW, then we're talking about 709, we're talking about compression, but then we have the MP4. Then obviously that means more compression, or for you who don't know, that MP4 is actually more compressed than the other two formats. But what scenario would you use the MP4 in?
Okay, so for me, MP4, I would use that in interviews.
Right.
But recently something happened with MP4s that has changed the game a lot. They have changed the MP4. MP4 would be the container. So you got MXF, MP4s, Cinema DNG. For MP4s, they're able to put 10-bit color into MP4s, which is make it better for all of us now.
Right. Because we have a smaller file now, but still containing
the information
that people can actually work with. Without
exactly.
breaking it down too much or destroying the image too much.
So giving us more flexibility in post,
right?
Giving the Gaffer more flexibility and the range to work with, deeper, a whole bunch of things. So which means interviews can look more cinematic, as people like to call it these days, but more technically, you could use the MP4s for that. I also use the MP4s so if you want to do quick and dirty, I could turn on the Rec 7 online, bake in the LUT, send it straight to the client for feedback, and go from that perspective. That would help reduce post-production time because it might not need coloring, it might not need all of these different things.
Right. So now, because we have that also means then that file management now becomes easier. Now, what would you advise people, or the sizes of SD cards or cards in general, because it's not only SD cards that you record on, because you've got SSD cards too as well.
Yes.
No. If I'm now getting in and saying, all right, I now get my camera, right? I ain't sure what I really want to shoot yet. Where will you tell me to start?
All right. So from my experience, having smaller cards could put you into a pickle. So if you get called to shoot a conference because your father's friend or mother suggests,
as most people will start out, like, my son, he got a camera, he could do a thing, call him.
And if you get the 10-bit footage or a camera that could record 10-bit, and you didn't necessarily check the menu, and you have a 32 megabyte card, you might run into issues and not be able to cover the whole conference.
Correct.
And that might
within the first hour.
Yes. You might end up with 15 minutes of footage.
Correct.
Now, if you have a 10-bit camera and you're recording 10-bit and you are at 24 FPS,
frames per second,
you might get over.
Right.
But as soon as you put it into 60 frames or you want to record slow motion, that will storage space, time will be cut by half.
And by slow motion, we're talking about 120, 240 or higher frame rates.
Yes, and as soon as the higher you go up, the more information
you
will use.
Right.
Yes.
So then your suggestion is then to start with a 64 or 128 or a 512 or a 1 terabyte.
So if I was to choose the ultimate card after my experience, I would choose a 128 card, or I would choose 264s. Reason why I would choose 264s is if one is corrupted, you have another card. So that's why I would choose the 264s.
I can't fault Neal for that. So that is how you go about choosing your card. So in this instance, bigger is better as it relates to cards and memory space. Neal, I want to thank you for being here, for coming and sharing knowledge and showing the viewers how to, or teaching the viewers how to. I can extend an invitation to have you back again. I mean, we have lots more that we can definitely chat about for hours.
I would love that.
But Neal, if people need to find you and to find Gear Hub, how can they do that?
All right. If you need to find me, you can look for me on Instagram at nealhope.films, NEALHOPE.films. Everybody spell my name with an I. And you can find Gear Hub at Gear Hub Pro or gearhub.pro on Instagram as well. Right. And my website is nealhope.com.
Right, and that's how you will reach my good friend here, Neal. We are all things 13 Degrees North Rentals, 13 Degrees North Productions, 13 Degrees North. I am Kirk Dawson, also on Instagram as the Caribbean Gaffer. Thank you. Make sure and subscribe and like this YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook as well at 13 Degrees North. I will see you in the next episode of How To.